visualization has been really, really important. And I have actually visualized the exact shot that I threw to qualify for the Olympics so many times that when I actually got down in the hack, I knew exactly what to do.
Welcome to the M26Fit Podcast, where we explore the connection between having a strong mind and a strong body. All right, our special guests today are Australia's first ever Olympic curlers, Dean Hewitt and Tahli Gill. Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Now, not too many people, I think, can claim to be the first in representing their country in a particular sport, and you guys competed at the 2022 Winter Olympics. What an awesome achievement, mate. Well done.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All righty. Now, can you guys just briefly explain for us, for our listeners, the sport of curling? What's involved?
So curling's that sport played on ice, where you have these big granite rocks weighing about 20 kilos. You're sliding these granite rocks down the sheet of ice about 45 meters long. You're trying to get as many of your stones as close as you can towards the target at the other end. And you're trying to get as many of your stones in there, close to the opposition's nearest stone. And as the stones are traveling down there, you put a rotation on the stone, which actually helps the stone curl in the direction that it's spinning towards. And then you bring in these brooms, and the brooms are the ones that, a lot of people know curling for, because you see people crazily sweeping in front of this stone, trying to make that stone go further. And it can adjust the direction a little bit too as well. It can make it go a bit straighter, or it can make it curl a little bit more as well. So at the end of the day, the most points wins the game.
Okay. So would you say it's a little bit like lawn bowls on ice? Is that the way it's been described in the past?
It's definitely been described that way. And I think for Australians, the relation is very clear for them that it's similar to lawn bowls on ice. But I guess there are other aspects as well, like sweeping.
Exactly. I look forward to getting into some of those technicalities a little bit later on. But now, can you just give our listeners a quick snapshot about yourselves and how you first got involved in curling?
So my mum, she's Australian, and she basically saw curling on the Olympics, and she thought, this is something that I want to give a go next. And she taught herself how to curl. She kind of got with a few other people who lived in the Brisbane area who moved from Scotland and Canada who curled when they were growing up. And so they all got together and kind of started the club up in Brisbane. And then she taught myself, and I have two younger sisters, how to curl as well. So I think her hope was that she would have a whole women's team of girls.
What about you, Dean?
I suppose for me, interestingly, I think we were the ones that actually sent the stones up to Tahli's mum to actually get that club started. So my family's always been in curling. So my mum's originally from Canada, where it's just massive over there. I think there's about 1 million curlers there. And she taught my dad, who's Australian, and they've been curling for Australia for years and years. And I was fortunate enough to actually play with mum for Australia, and even dad coming up later this year. So yeah, it's a family affair, and that's essentially how we got into it.
Now, because obviously a couple of Aussies, you're competing in a sport that's not exactly a typical choice for most people. How old were you when you actually thought to yourselves, hey, I'm pretty good at this?
Well, I started when I was about 11, and I can actually move the rock, so not then. I think it was probably around our first Worlds, 2019, when we actually ended up with a really good result. And I think that was when, okay, this is something we could really take to the Olympics. So probably around then, I would say.
And I think for me, it was probably when I was 9, that's when I started actually playing some proper games and won the Victorian Championships with my dad. And I was like, oh, gee, this game I'm actually kind of good at, I suppose. And I think from that, I started getting asked by some junior teams around Australia, see if they wanted me to play for the juniors. And mum was like, no, you're too young. So we had to wait a little bit before she thought I was old enough to play. But yeah, it was probably at a young age where I thought this is kind of my thing.
What do you think some of the key attributes are to be a good curler, to be competitive at curling?
Oh, I think the first thing is probably around precision. the sport comes down to millimeters. I mean, teams qualify for Olympics based on millimeters as well. So it's such a precise sport to get that stone from 45 meters away. Think like a footy field. If you're on the 50-meter mark and you're essentially put into the goal square and you're trying to hit like a blade of grass, and that's how precise you've got to be. Fortunately, you've got the sweeping, so you've got to have that cardio fitness to actually get that stone down towards that desired spot. And essentially, it's like repeated sprints over and over and over for the sweeping. So the cardio side is so key, but then the power for actually throwing those big weight shots, and then the precision coming from the actual throwing of each shot to get that really precise spot in the target at the other end.
Bit of balance in there as well, obviously, because you're sliding and you have to be super, super strong in your core. So yeah, balance as well.
Yeah, I can actually relate to that. So I did have a bit of a go at curling over in Canada a number of years ago. And yeah, it's one of those things that you watch it on television, you think it's not that hard. And I think I remember the very first time I was sliding that stone down that I slipped straight over because it was quite difficult to maintain that balance, but still a lot of good fun. When and how did you guys first meet, and when did you start playing together as an actual team?
So I suppose we've known each other since 2011, so it's been quite a while now. We played on a junior women's and a junior men's team, so we tended to go to the same events together. We never got to play with each other until 2018. So before Tahli, I was playing with my mum for a couple of years and played a couple of world championships. And then for our last year, I played against Tahli. And I was like, oh, gee, Tahli's playing pretty well now. I hadn't seen her for a few years curl. And so after that point, I said, hey, it's probably time that I look forward to the future a bit more. And I think mum was going to be about 60 by the Olympics. So I thought, it's probably time for a change. And sure enough, I called up Tahli, and yeah, she was pretty excited in 2018 to get started and try and hit that goal of making the Olympics.
Fantastic. What a great story. Have you got anything to add to that, Tahli?
I guess, yeah, we sort of knew each other growing up in juniors, and I think Dean was a little older than me, so I was like, oh, he's a very good player, but I never thought we would end up playing together. So I was very surprised when he asked me, and I guess the rest is history.
Yeah, so we're only a few years out then from those 2022 Winter Olympics. What's the qualification process that you go through?
So the qualification process for us is basically we have to get points over 2 world championships to sort of get that top 8 spots. There's 10 spots that go to the Olympics for curling in our discipline. So the last 2 spots you have to get through a qualification event, which essentially you have to win out of that event in your pool, and you get the last 2 spots. That's how we qualified for the Beijing Olympics. So our ideal is that we qualify by getting points at Worlds this time round.
And was there a particular moment when you found out that, hey, we've actually qualified? And do you remember how you felt at that time when you knew that you actually made it to get to those 2022 Olympics?
Yeah, so last time when we qualified for the Olympics, it was pretty intense. Like, we had to go through that second entry, which Tyler was speaking about before, and we had to win the event, essentially. There were only 2 pools, and the winner of each pool basically went to the Olympics. So fortunately, we went undefeated, but that last game where we had against Korea, that we had a pretty poor start, in all honesty, and we had to battle back in the second half there and throw everything at it. But when Tahli made that last shot for the win, it was an incredible feeling. You could see it on our faces, how excited we were, and it was still a bit of disbelief and shock at that moment because, finally our dream had come true.
We actually had 2 flights booked after that event, one that was going home back to Australia and one that was going back to Canada. So if we qualified, we would have gone back to Canada, which is what we ended up doing. So it was the best Best flight cancellation I've ever had to make to not go back home because we didn't make it. So, but yeah, like Dean said, it was extremely stressful, and probably the most pressure I've ever been under in my life at that event. But it was really good.
And I think especially like right after we'd qualified, suddenly like the next couple hours were unbelievable. Like straight away we go back to the hotel and, you know, you're getting these cheers and claps from people and your competitors coming in to the hotel. But then straight away we're getting phone calls and we're getting, you know, Zoom calls across to all the channels across Australia to get interviews. And it all just like took off in a heartbeat. And the craziest thing is, though, we didn't get to see much of it because we're in Canada for the whole time leading up to the Olympics. All the promos and stuff we didn't really get to see until we got back.
Oh, wow. But that must have been amazing. So, because I know with some sports, you actually go through a criteria, then, excuse me, you might actually have to wait and you get a phone call a few weeks later, but you actually knew right then and there at that event that you'd made it through.
Well, we still had to be selected by the AOC, but just because of the nature of the sport in Australia and the fact that we were the most prominent team on the circuit and that we had qualified the spot for Australia, we kind of knew we were going to be chosen. So yeah, after that event and after winning that game, and I think when I cancelled that flight, it all sunk in that we were going to the Olympics, and that was just the most amazing feeling ever.
Oh, the funny thing was, actually, I think a few months before we actually went to Canada to prepare for this event, we actually had to do a promo for Channel 7 at the time for the Olympics. And that was, we had one clip which was, you've made it to the Olympics, and one clip where we didn't. So we had to do that thing like backwards and forwards. There's so many different things preparing as if we were qualified and we were at the Olympics, and one clip where we weren't.
Yeah. I forgot about that.
All right, let's have a chat about some of the challenges that you guys go through. The sport that you've chosen, again, it's not your typical sport that people in Australia play. So what are some of the challenges that you guys go through in order to maintain that competitiveness?
The biggest challenge for us is that we don't have any dedicated curling facilities in Australia. So Dean and I have to spend quite a lot of time training and competing overseas. Particularly, we've sort of based a lot of our training and events in Canada. So that's probably our biggest barrier and has been right for our whole curling career. So we've had to be very creative with how we train and the types of things that we do when we are home for the off season. And I guess the other big barrier for us is that we don't actually live in the same state. So when we're home, we don't really see each other than over Zoom or sort of various meetings here and there. But that's probably our two biggest barriers at the moment.
And I think it's so funny as well because like we hit COVID, right? And everyone's going into lockdown and everyone's freaking out because they can't train with their team anymore. And we were like, oh, this is same old because we're, you know, still doing Zoom meetings. That's nothing new for us. Yeah, like in terms of like not having dedicated ice, what we'd kind of have a similarity with there is like the Test cricket team going out and training for cricket on the beach. Like the surfaces we have in terms of ice aren't flat because they're all chopped up by those hockey players, you know, who plays hockey and chops it up, right? Not pointing at anyone's faces, Magnus. But,
no, not at all, mate. No offense taken.
But yeah, so the ice is quite bumpy, which means the rocks actually don't curl in the directions they're supposed to. So to train on that, just like, you know, training on the beach where you're bowling a ball, it hits the sand and goes in any direction, you can't predict where it's going to go. So it's a challenge training on that. So we find different ways and different opportunities to actually make up for that. So we literally train on our bathroom floors. So I think from the youngest age, I was sliding out with a woolly sock down the lino floor to get those reps in, to get the feel of, you know, what ice would be like. And then still to this day, I think tomorrow part of my gym session is literally sweeping on the bathroom tiles. Like I'm doing intervals on the tiles to get fit so we're ready to go once we hit the ice.
That's amazing. So can you just, let's just have we're just intrigued about what their training looks like. It's going to vary when you're overseas, but when you're in Australia now, that physical side of the sport in particular, can you just run us through some of the things that what's a training day look like for you in Australia?
So in Australia, we don't really get the ice time. We get one night per week for a couple hours. It kind of differs between Tahli and I with what you can do. I get an hour of training before playing a game every night, but Tahli, I think, is largely a game, or if she's got a sheet free, she can do a bit of training. But, it's all off ice, largely. So the off ice comprises of 6 days a week in the gym. It's a few days of strength training and power to get that kind of explosive power out of the hack to slide the stone down. And cope with the demands of when we actually hit the ice training, because when we're on ice overseas, we've got to be ready for that. And then, the combination of that and the cardio fitness to cope with the sweeping demands, because with sweeping, you're sweeping for up to 20 seconds, then you have a minute break, you might have to sweep again, and 40 to 60 rocks in a game, you cover up to 5 kilometers of ice across a day. It's a lot of sweeping over and over. So you're hitting both the upper and lower body for curling.
There's a lot of body awareness too in curling. So you have to be so in tune with how your body's moving, where you are on the ice and where your target is. So I find that things like yoga, Pilates, it's really good for having that body awareness and having it so fine-tuned that you know exactly what your body's doing. And that's helped me a lot in my curling career as well. So there's a bit of that too.
Yeah, you touched on it before, Talia, with the agility and the balance side of it. Is there anything specific that you can do to assist with that?
Well, unfortunately, it's a little bit of you just got to get out and keep going with the slides, and there will be some falls every now and again. I was a bit more fortunate. My sport before curling was figure skating, so I actually had really good balance before I even started to curl. And I think too, just like I said, having that really strong core is so important for, especially because we're so down low when we're sliding, that having that core and strong legs and sort of like really good sort of foot placement as well, that's important for curling. But definitely it's a repetition with the sliding, just getting used to how slippery it is.
So when you're spending time overseas, what's a training week look like for you when you're overseas?
That's when our on-ice training really ramps up. So we're on the ice 5 days a week. We try and aim for, and that's just for training. Sometimes we'll have 5 days plus a weekend event. But 5 days on the ice, that can range from 2 to 3 hours every day. And then we have off ice before or after that. So we continue our strength training, our conditioning, and however, Dean and I are not sweeping on the bathroom tiles, we're actually sweeping on ice. So those are our conditioning sweeping sessions on the ice. And still like keeping up with running or anything else that sort of we like to do, yoga, like I said before.
Yeah, and I think even like the gym continues when we're over there. Like it's still 5 days a week in the gym on top of the 5 days on ice. So still got to keep up that strength and power that you're trying to develop in the gym, but maintaining that through the season is so key, just so we're not losing any of that strength and potentially leading to injuries.
I just had a visual of you doing your little broom work on the bathroom tile floor, Dean. Is that anything, you've got any video footage or anything like that you can share with us, mate?
Oh, I think I've got some around. During COVID, actually, they have those slide boards, right, for a lot of athletes that slide side to side. And so the VIS had a big, I think it's an octagon shape. Anyway, that got brought out to my house throughout COVID. And that's what I was using every day, sweeping on that. So I'm sure I can find a few photos of me sweeping on that. Or I think I've got one vacuuming on it too to clean it up. But
oh, that's funny. All right, let's shift gears a little bit. Now, what about pressure? So I'd imagine still in your sport, there's a big mental side involved in it and obviously strategies as well. But just in those pressure moments during a match, have you got any strategies that you've developed over the years and how you deal with those moments?
Well, our roles are a little bit different in terms of when we might feel pressure throughout a game. So I throw the first and the last rock. I definitely feel the pressure quite a lot in the last rock. And like Dean said, that last shot to go to the to qualify for the Olympics was it was a whole sort of like cycle of emotions. When we called a timeout just to sort of like collect ourselves and have a chat with our coach, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is to go to the Olympics. Like, I'm freaking out. But visualization has been really, really important. And it's actually really weird because I have actually visualized the exact shot that I threw to qualify for the Olympics so many times that when I actually got down in the hack, I knew exactly what to do. And it didn't feel like anything too stressful as soon as I got down there, and I just took a deep breath. And it really is about focusing on just very simple key things like, where do I have to aim? How fast do I have to slide? And the amount of times that we're on the ice, we know exactly what that feels like. So you just have to trust that you've got the training behind you and you know exactly what you're doing. But visualization for me has very much helped my whole mental game in curling. So I actually visualize every single shot before I throw it. And if I visualize making it, I'll probably make it. But sometimes the negativity creeps in and I visualize missing it and I miss it. So that's a big part of it.
Yeah, and I think it all comes down to the process, as Tahli's saying. Like, you've trained for years and years for those kind of shots, so you're ready for it. Just bring it back to that, rather than worry about the pressure. At the end of the day, pressure is a privilege, right? It's actually a good thing, and it means you care. So, you just have to use it to your advantage and say, okay, I care about this, but I've done all of this work over the past how many years. I'm ready for it. Take it on.
That is an awesome way to look at it, and it's interesting because I've had a number of different athletes say exactly the same thing. Is how they deal with the pressure is to trust the process, to not overcomplicate it. Like you said, this is just another training run, so to speak. Just going to do exactly what you practice to do, and it's no more difficult than that. So, fantastic. What about confidence? Do you guys consider yourselves confident, and does that play a very big role in you guys being competitive, do you think?
Confidence is an interesting one, I think.
Yeah.
Because confidence, for me at least, it's an emotion, right, which can go up and down very easily and can be based on so many different factors. So at least for me, when I think of confidence, I think of, well, am I competent instead? Because for me, if I know that I'm competent and I can track that and I know that I am competent, that's what's going to give me confidence. So rather than thinking of, am I confident today, which can range from so many different things, just say, am I competent? And you look at your data and you say, I've done all of these training sessions, I've hit all of these metrics. At the end of the day, I can achieve what I want to achieve because I'm competent.
Yeah, I think very similar to Dean, your confidence lies in the work that you've put in before that big moment. But I have a lot of confidence in Dean as a teammate. I have a lot of confidence in my team, my coaches. So all the sort of behind the scenes things that prepare you for those games or those big moments, that's what you can fall back on because it is a team sport. So that's sort of where I draw my confidence from. And also too, I kind of, one of the coaches that we first started working with, he was big on having a great shot inventory. So you record every time that you had this amazing sort of game-winning shot. So sort of if I'm getting a bit nervous or feeling those sort of jitters, I always go back to that and reflect and sort of visualize making that. So I know that that's always in my back pocket if I need.
All right. How do you guys prepare both mentally and tactically before a match? I'd imagine that against different competitors, but do you have a particular way that you go about preparing before each match?
I think we're a little bit different. So before a big match, I try not to have many. Superstition is a little bit big in curling. So I try not to like get into too much of a routine because then I think I would become superstitious. But I love listening to music, stuff that gets me like super pumped up. While I'm sort of either on the bike or sort of running around, I'll just be doing a lot of visualizing. Sometimes I even don't think about anything. I just sort of go through the motions of warming up, just because I think sometimes you can get a little too into it, so you can overthink. That's for me anyway. But if I'm particularly nervous, it's a little strange, but I put on the top 5 speeches from Lord of the Rings, and then I feel like, yeah, okay, I've got this. So that's probably a bit of a quirky thing that I do.
I love it. I love it. What about you, Dean?
I think for me, it's just finding that right level of arousal, I suppose. A lot of people talk about like inverted U and trying to find that spot on that inverted U for what suits you. Because, you don't want to be too nervous and jittery where you're just going to like freeze when it comes to the big moment. You also don't want to be, slow, lethargic and sluggish. So, even down to things like nutrition, like I know that, hot meals before a game or fatty meals before a game, I don't perform well because I feel sluggish. So making sure I'm in the right mental state comes down to nutrition as well. And it might come down to the warm up. It might be, do I have to bring up some more intensity in this warm up, or do I need to have a few more deep breaths to make sure I'm in the right mental state? So all these things kind of come into play and depend on how you're feeling at the time, but having those resources and I guess acceptance or an awareness of where you are before a game is so key in that element.
Yeah. So by the sound of it, there's a level of consistency around the way that you do prepare, and particularly obviously not superstitious and you're wearing your lucky undies or anything, but at the same time you might be consistent in the type of meals that you have, for example, leading up to a match.
Yeah. There's also quite a lot of, I guess sort of like in our early career, we did a lot of trial and error with things that did or didn't work. And we were very conscious about noting things. Like, for example, I'm not really a morning person, so I need to have a very high intensity warm up just to sort of get everything going, get into the right mind frame, and like Dean said, the right arousal level. So it really is about knowing yourself and just being able to trial and error that, especially throughout the season. So that's always changing too. Like something that worked for me a while ago doesn't work for me anymore. So you're just constantly understanding what you're going through.
And I think it's such a key element around like the routines versus superstitions that Tahli talks about, because so as Tahli says, a lot of people have like superstitions in curling, especially around socks. Like I think originally in my career, I was like, oh yeah, got to wear those same socks until they lose their luck, right? And now I'm the opposite. Now I'm like clean socks every single game. That's all I really care about. It's hygiene.
Yes.
But
That's
also it's, I think so. But it's also the routines. Like I found out early in my career as well that, you want to stick to your routines. However, if someone breaks that, it's knowing how to go, okay, that's fine. And just falling back into the routine when the time suits. Like you don't have to be stuck to your routine, because if something does come up, if distraction does come up, you've got to be able to address that and come back from it. So it's a lot more fluid these days, I think, for both of us, rather than just like so stuck into you have to do this, warm up at this stage, this many minutes before. Keeping that routine somewhat similar, but having the flexibility and adaptability so it's not a superstition and you don't hit the ice going, oh no, I've lost my routine here, I can't play. Like for me, it might just be, I had a stage where I was like, as soon as I put on my gloves, I'm good to go. Except then the coach says, I'm going to take your gloves from you today, how do you play? So we've had that before too. It's like, yeah, I'm going to take one of your piece of equipment out of your bag before you go and train. So you have to know how to adapt to those situations as well. So I think all those things where you're adapting to those changes in routine are so key.
That is fantastic. I think that was that one lesson that COVID did teach us all is pivoting, isn't it? That, yeah, you can have that routine, have everything set up, but I think it's a great idea pulling something out of your bag just to see how you deal with it.
Yeah, definitely. We do a lot of work with what-if situations. So we are constantly going through stuff, especially before a big event. You know, if this happens, how do we deal with it? So, and it gets quite silly, but sometimes those things do pop up, like if the bus is late and you have to walk back to your hotel and things like that, which has happened to us. Yeah.
Like 1 a.m. when we got home.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've actually done a lot of that in business planning. We refer to it as scenario planning. So it's very, very real and a great idea from a planning aspect and from a tactical, strategic aspect to have a solution in mind for when something does come up and doesn't go according to plan.
Yeah.
Now, resilience, mental toughness. What's that mean for you guys? And do you have a recipe for building it?
Oh, I don't know if I have a recipe as such. My biggest definition for resilience is your ability to bounce back over and over, no matter what gets thrown at you. I think a lot of it comes from like experiencing tough conditions and bouncing back from that. So it does give you that confidence element that I speak about, rather than just being like, oh, this is a new situation, I can't deal with this. But, you know, I've dealt with these kind of situations before, and it's having those, I guess, realization moments of I've done this before, I've come back from harder things. This could be a hardest moment of your life. But the one thing you would ever regret, and we always said this going into so many of our championships, especially Olympics, was if you would regret the most if you're not trying, or if you're not trying hard enough. No matter what the result is, if you win, if you lose, if you get the job, if you whatever it might be in life, if you don't try or don't try hard enough, that's what you're going to regret.
Yeah, resilience is it's been a big journey for me, to be honest. I'm a very sort of emotionally player. But yeah, and resilience, it's just one of those things where you really have to, like Dean said, have that life experience behind you. And sometimes things come up and you just have to sort of go through as best that you can. But resilience is something that I've been working on quite heavily the last 2 years. So I don't have a recipe. I'm still figuring it out. But yeah, it's always all about just honestly giving it your best go. And my biggest thing is, like Dean said, if you get knocked down, how quick can you get back up? That's always what I think for resilience.
So just speaking of getting back up, so there's been a serious setback that you guys have had, and if you do have a poor performance, how do you reset yourself mentally before you get back out there to compete in the next match?
In terms of, I guess, our overall career, COVID was a major setback, just with the fact that we couldn't leave Australia to get back onto our training circuit for such a long period of time. So that was a major setback in terms of something hindering our training. Another setback, I think, was when we competed at the Worlds. So just with the nature of COVID and everything, there was one Worlds where the top 8 qualified straight to the Olympics for 2022, and then everyone else had to go into the qualification. That event was not great for us. And I think coming away from that, I know I felt very, very down about how our performance was and how we would sort of continue on with getting that goal. So we just had to basically sit down, review, have a super honest conversation about what worked, what didn't. And we got to work straight away on the things that didn't work and changing things and trying things. And we knew exactly what we needed to do to get on top of the things that didn't work. And we put in the work for the next event, which was the Olympic qualification. That was our next major thing. And that worked out really well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think Tahli summed it up perfectly. I think the big things coming from those setbacks are just your ability to bounce back and control what you can control. Like, that's all you can do from each moment. And rather than focusing on, oh, well, what if, well, what can I control right now? What are the things we need to change? And let's go do it.
Well said. Now, Tahli's expressed just how big of a visualizer that she is. Is that something that you practice much of yourself, Dean?
I think of shots so often and without me even really noticing. Like, sometimes I do it consciously as part of like sports psychology, but it often happens throughout the day, random moments. Visualization or imagery is so key, and I think bring in different stimuli as well, because for me it all comes down to, you could think of it as, oh, it's just me throwing the stone, and visualizing you as internally your eyes looking out. But then it's also looking at, can I see that from a bird's eye view? Can I see that from behind me? Can I actually hear the noises? Can I feel the wind going across our face? Can you feel the pressure under your foot? All these different sensations. And if you bring those things in, you just have a better body awareness overall. And I think a lot of people just think of visualization as your visual, but actually bring in all the different senses are a good way of encompassing your whole body.
Yeah, we've done a lot of work on visualizing. We have a sports psychologist, and visualizing is one of those things where it takes a lot of practice. And at the start, I was like, oh, this is so annoying. Like, I can't even put together a clear image, and it lasts like 2 seconds. But you really just have to force yourself to, if it's something that you are very interested in and you'd like to get really good at, it does take quite a lot of work and quite a lot of hunkering down and just trying the best to get an image together. And then I can visualize stuff really easily now. So it's an awesome tool to have.
So does that visualization, does that come in? So let's have a chat about goals and what they look like over the next couple of years and for you guys. Because I guess we got the 2026 games coming up. So there's some qualification actually events, isn't there, leading up that you've got. So yeah, what do your goals look like over the next couple of years?
Well, our goal is to get back to the Olympics, but we've done that. So we would like to be on the podium in 2026. That's our massive overarching goal. To stand on the podium is definitely a lifelong dream for the two of us. So we've had a taste for the Olympics. Now we want some hardware to go with it. But I guess in terms of qualification, we've just had one Worlds that started the collection of points. We have next Worlds coming up in 2025, which we are the team that's going to that. So we're doing our best to prepare for that. And like I said, we still have the last 2 spots where we can qualify in that qualification event. So we've got a couple more chances to qualify.
Yeah, and I think along the way, there's a lot of different tour events that hopefully we can get that exposure. I think we have about 11 events before the World Championships coming up overseas. So that's where we'll be trying to, gain that exposure to those good teams, play against them, but also try and get the exposure to those finals. Because, if you want to get onto the podium, you got to do well in finals. So we've got to do that more and more coming up over the next 11 events.
So imagine, let's have a look at some of the sacrifices that you guys have to go through in pursuit of that dream. And I love the fact that you've upped the ante and a podium is on the cards. And wish you all the best for that. But what would you say to some of the sacrifices that you guys have suffered and endured in pursuit of that dream?
I think the biggest one is being overseas for so many months. Like, we're overseas for basically 8 months of the year. It's a lot of time to be away from family, friends, relationships, and all those kind of things, and to keep those going is difficult. It's a lot of time over Zoom and, not spending as much time with family that you'd like, and a lot of time in cold. Like, it's cold where we train. We're always in winter. Tahli's a bit lucky that it's probably like 30 degrees in Brisbane. It's still winter over there, apparently. But, down in Melbourne, it's still chilly during winter, and then you go back to winter again. So we've made a priority for us to at least come home for Christmas so we get a bit more heat and some time with family across those special times of the year. But yeah, we're short on vitamin D. That's a given because you just don't get in the sun very often. But yeah, the time away is probably the biggest sacrifice for sure. And look at the income. Income's tough. When you're only working for 4 months of the year back in Australia, it's tough to make enough income to sustain us. And at the end of the day, your career's kind of put on hold, I suppose. You want to be. A lot of people, I'm turning 30 this year. A lot of people have families. They're married for a few years. They have kids. They have a full-time job. But I don't have any of those things. So at the end of the day, that's a sacrifice that I'm willing to make to try and get to that podium.
Yeah, like Dean said, so much time away from family. Family is super, super important to both of us. And 8 months of the year, and I have a boyfriend, so he has been with me throughout the whole sort of journey with curling, and I don't think we've spent a full year together in the same country, and we've been together for almost 8 years. So online, like having dates online and stuff is difficult. Long distance dating is not fun, but yeah, just that quality time with family is I get very homesick.
Yeah, I take my hat off to you guys. It's amazing those sacrifices that you guys are making. What would you say to any budding young athlete dreaming of competing at the Olympics?
Go for it. Like, absolutely go for it, because the whole, yes, getting to the Olympics and being at the Olympics is really special, but this is very cliche. It's really about how you get there. You learn so much about yourself being an athlete. You learn so many life skills that really translate into everything. They translate into how you communicate with people, your work, whatever you choose to do. Really, I think it's awesome, but I think do be prepared that it's a tough road. It's not an easy road, but it's definitely worth it if you're willing to put the time and the energy into it.
Couldn't have said it better. I think that's honestly perfect. And I think especially those people that are going to that next level and they want to, reach their dreams. You get those moments where things get tough, as Tahli said, like it's not easy. Making the Olympics, it's like 1 in 500,000 people around the world. Like it is a small group. But at the end of the day, people can do it, and you can do it if you put the time in and work in. I always think about, if something does come up, think of yourself in, at that dream, at that pinnacle. Is that person at that pinnacle looking back on this day and saying thank you for what you've done? And if they're going to say thank you, then you're doing something right that day. So always think about, is that person at my dream going to actually thank me for what I'm doing today?
Very, very well said. Now, the Aussie Athlete Fund that we're involved in with you guys, can you tell our viewers out there what is it and how people can get involved?
So the Aussie Athlete Fund is a initiative brought together from Nat Cook, the gold medalist from the Sydney Beach Volleyball. So she, along with a few other people, have got together 100 athletes with a goal of raising $1 million between the 100 athletes. So essentially the 100 athletes get paired with hopefully 100 businesses in their journey to make $10,000 per person. So they're trying to raise those funds to reach their dream of whatever it might be. It might be the best in their sport. It might be competing for Australia at the Olympics. But at the end of the day, their real goal is to make sure no one is leaving their sport because of the financial barriers that are placed on them.
Yeah. And I think having that connection, having that support, having that even guidance is very important for athletes at any level. So we found it so beneficial to be a part of that foundation.
No, that's awesome. And we'll have a bunch of information in the show notes for people who'd like to get involved. Now, last question before we get on to our quick fire question. Where are you guys 6 years from now? It's 2030.
It's so hard to think ahead sometimes when 2026 has been such a focus for us. But similar to what we did last time, we had 2022 as that's where we want to look to. And then after that, we'll sort of reevaluate. So 2026 is our focus. And other than that, anything's possible.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think exactly right. You look at all those other Olympians at the moment, and a lot of them have made the Olympics. They've either succeeded or they haven't. But at the end of the day, you've made the Olympics. So in my mind, everyone succeeded by doing that first and foremost. They've given everything they've got. And a lot of them just said, look, let's enjoy what 2026 is, and then we'll kind of have a deep breath and have a bit of relaxation and work out what's on the cards from beyond that. But I think, 2026, as Tahli said, is the forefront of what we're focusing on for now.
Well answered. Yeah, don't get too far ahead of yourselves. Now, quick fire questions. Now, I'll get you guys can both answer these, and if you get stuck on one, just hit pause. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Yes, let's do it.
All right. What lights you up and gives you motivation?
The Paris Olympians. That was epic to watch them.
Yeah. My family, they are the backbone of why I do what I do, and they're so supportive of me.
One word to describe yourself.
Goofy? I don't know.
I'd say determined myself.
In which country and century did curling first begin?
No, it began in Scotland.
Yeah, over 500 years ago. So I'm going to say the 16th century.
Yep, you're right. I did my research. The most favourite place that you guys have competed?
Banff, Canmore. I love it.
Yeah.
You're in this rink and you can see like moose and elk and bears and the mountains as you're playing. You get really distracted, but it's really fun.
I would say the same, and they looked after us really well during COVID and while we were preparing for 2022. So I would say Banff, Canmore.
And half the people are Aussie anyway.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that because Banff was where I had my curling experience. There you go.
There you go.
So who are the current best curlers in the world?
I guess technically Sweden.
Sweden is really good. Yeah.
They won the last
Across
World
the-
Championships, so I think they won the men's as well. So I think on average, probably Sweden.
Yes.
All right. Childhood idol.
Probably my mom.
Aww.
Oh.
Mine was Roger Federer. I think it still is, actually.
All right. How much does a stone cost? Like you mentioned, they're made out of granite and they weigh almost 20 kilos. How much do they cost?
It depends on the quality of them. So if you want like Olympic grade stones, you're looking at $1,000 for a stone. But if you're looking for a good club level, you're looking at $500 or just over $500 for a stone. Luckily, we don't have to buy them because 8 stones for a team would get very pricey and very pricey for excess luggage.
100%. Now, another sport that you guys follow or like to watch?
I enjoy ice hockey, actually. I love going and watching it live when we're in Canada. I think it's
Good answer.
a good sport.
And mine's AFL for sure. Love the G.
Where does your inspiration come from?
Oh. Well, as I said before, like I think the other athletes at the Olympics were just phenomenal. Watching them compete at the highest level and training with them every day at the VIS, I think is incredible.
Yes, to that, but also a lot of my childhood was training with my dad, training with my younger sisters. So they pushed me very hard, and we're very competitive, so that helps.
All right, all-time favourite movie?
Lord of the Rings. It's a trilogy.
Oh, no way.
Lord of the Rings is mine.
The Hangover. Followed by Mr. Bean. Close second.
If you had to choose one thing, what makes you guys such a formidable team?
I think the one thing that everyone says actually is the communication side of things. Everyone, when we step off the ice and people talk to us, I often say your communication is so good. So I think how we communicate on ice is so crucial to how we manage our emotions, but also how we actually make the most out of every stone.
And right now, which country? Oh, sorry, Tahli, go.
I was going to say probably our drive. I think we've had to get so creative with how we want to get to the top. So that's been a big part of why we're successful.
Awesome. Which country is curling most popular in, do you think?
Canada, I would say.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Japan's getting up there, but probably Canada.
Yeah.
And what's the most used app on your phone?
I've been writing a lot of reports lately, and in the background I've had Spotify on like all the time to get through it. So Spotify, I'd say.
Yeah, I was going to say Spotify or maybe Audible. It's probably a tie.
What about a hobby that you enjoy?
I'm a big reader, so I read quite a lot, but also painting is something that I enjoy to do in my spare time when I have it.
Yeah, and mine would be baking when I have the spare time.
I'll have to remember that when I head down to Melbourne and visit. We'll see what you can bake up for us, mate.
Yep.
What's been your greatest achievement so far? I think I know the answer to this.
Qualifying for the Olympics.
Qualifying
in a heartbeat. Yeah.
Yeah. What's the best advice that you've ever been given?
Mine is that the strongest voice that you can ever listen to is the voice inside your head. So everything else is noise. What you're saying to yourself is the strongest voice.
I think for me, it's do what you enjoy, because that's a thing that you're going to excel at and keep pursuing.
One thing you can't live without.
Ice cream.
Chocolate. I have a problem. I have a chocolate problem.
Your favourite saying?
Surely it's a Lord of the Rings one for Tahli.
Yeah.
Of some sort. Mine would probably be like, make it happen. That was it from like a young age when I was a kid.
It is a Lord of the Rings. Even shadows must pass. It's just talking about going through dark times, and there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, basically.
I love your consistency, Talia.
I am consistent. There's nothing. I am consistent.
All right. If you could have dinner with anyone in the world, who would that be?
Mine's probably Beyonce. I think she's awesome.
And I think I'd want to meet Roger Federer.
I can't believe you're going outside the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say J.R. Tolkien, but then I was like, no, that's a bit obsessive.
All right, guys. Last one. Finish this sentence. I believe.
I believe hard work pays off.
Yeah, I believe anything is possible.
Very, very well said, guys. Thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute honour and a privilege having you on the podcast. First ever Australian curlers. And wish you guys every success. I love the sacrifices that you're making. I love the fact that you're chasing your dream, and wish you every success. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Magnus. Thanks for your support.
Now, if you've enjoyed this episode, we have a small favour to ask. Please take a moment to subscribe, review, and share this podcast with someone you think will appreciate it. Your support helps us reach more listeners, and we can continue delivering content that educates, inspires and empowers you. Don't forget to follow us on social media to stay in the loop with all our latest news. 2024 is going to be a huge year, and we'll continue running our weekly Friday morning kayaking sessions on the beautiful Brisbane River, along with plenty more thrilling adventures, exciting activities and challenges are planned. We'd love for you to join us and be part of our growing community. Remember, success is all about consistency. And by investing 26 minutes exercising both your mind and your body every day, you too can become the strongest, fittest and healthiest version of you. So stay tuned and stay active.